Terry, I just wanted to say thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I was really inspired when I watched your TED Talk and when I read up about you and neuroscience. And I love your history and I love how you have your own marketing company and you consult companies and brands about marketing and neuromarketing. And so I would love to just ask you just to talk a little bit more about your history in the neuromarketing and also a moment in your life that you felt the most proud about.
Okay. You want to start out with that question?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have to say the proudest moment I had was on October 3rd, 2010, when
Hmm.
I finished my very first marathon.
Wow.
The
Nice.
reason that was I was at age 45, and I did not like running before. I hated running all my life until that point, until probably 2009. And then when I restarted, and then I fell in love with it. But within a year, I finished my very first marathon.
Oh,
That was the
congrats.
proudest moment. Thank you. That was the proudest moment I ever had. Just because I just never thought I would ever done anything like that. Crazy. It is insane. But I loved it. I loved it. It was, and since then I've done another 11 marathons, and this year I'm not
Oh.
gonna do it.
Oh my
This year,
goodness.
yeah, this year because I'm here in Minnesota. We have a very famous marathon. It's called the Grandma's Marathon. They just
Hmm.
canceled it about a month ago. It's
Oh
supposed to
no.
be a month away, but they just canceled it. And then we have the Twin Cities Marathon, which is in October. I don't believe they're gonna have it. Just normally they got like a 12,000 people for the marathon, another 8,000 people for the 10 miler.
Hmm.
You're looking at 20,000 people in a very small area. I
Hmm.
don't think they
Hmm.
can, with the virus, out of control. I just don't know. With all so much uncertainty, I just don't think they can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, all the major sports have been put off, and I think that it's going to be really hard for large crowds to come together again. And so I think that a lot of people are just going to have to find ways to work out on their own or entertain themselves. And running a marathon is such a feat. I applaud you. I haven't done a
You
marathon
haven't.
yet. No.
You should
And
try it.
I'm going to. I have to. I think that I'm actually at a point where I'm trying to bag peaks or hike the largest peaks in California. So
Wow.
I've done Strawberry Peak. I'm climbing Mount Baldy this Sunday, and then
Wow.
going to climb hopefully Mount Whitney in the summertime. And so that's my version of a marathon this year. But after that, I have to do a marathon. I think it's
Hmm.
prime time for me now, just because I think a lot of my friends and successful entrepreneurs and people like yourself that I respect have all done marathons. So it's time for me to do one too.
I I I would encourage you to do one because it is a life-changing experience. I
Amazing.
really It's almost kind of a semi-addictive. Every year I had this battle: should I run it? Should I not run it? And then at the end, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna run it.
Yeah.
But this year was kind of a hard decision. I made the call before the virus crisis hit because just want to take a year off and rest my
Yeah.
body a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine it does do a number on your knees and your joints.
Yeah.
So Terry, other than running a marathon, tell me more about your background and also how you got into neuromarketing.
My background actually is, getting into neuromarketing was almost like a by accident. My background is in neuroscience. I spent probably over 30 years in the field of neuroscience. I got my master's degree from Duke. I studied neuroscience there, and then I got my Ph.D. in neuroscience from Vanderbilt University. Then I got hired by the University of Minnesota by their neuroscience department. I ended up working there for 20 years. Um, so I've been in neuroscience for a long time. I see how researchers do research. I did a lot of research myself. Then, almost like when I was working at the University of Minnesota, I want to have something on the side. I want to create like a kind of like a safety net, just in case my job disappears. I have something to fall back onto. Then in 2003, I created one of the first local marketing firms that specialize in search and optimization. That's 17 or 18 years ago.
Hmm.
That got me into thinking about marketing. But back then, neuroscience and marketing didn't really share anything in common. Even though I tried looking for it, but I didn't really find anything, that there would be overlap. I went, straight into SEO, web design, but along the way, I got this kind of this idea, all these websites look the same. When we bring people in through, through SEO, through Google high rankings, which I was able to do. But what really make people stay on your website, decide to say, I'm going to buy from this website versus somebody else's website? So I was working with a lot of clients, and how do I actually, not just bring traffic to my client's website, but also help them sell their product and services? That got me thinking about, there got to be something about the brain, about the, the knowledge about brain, what catches their attention, what actually trigger the people's responses. That got me thinking about how to use the brain science knowledge or neuroscience knowledge to enhance what I did in terms of web
Hmm.
design, in terms of SEO. Ultimately, it was conversion optimization.
Hmm.
If you can get all the people into your brick and mortar store, but nobody buys anything, doesn't matter. How many times we walk into a store without buying anything? That's kind of what really intrigues me about bringing the neuroscience of consumer decisions into what I did, in terms of online marketing, especially web design, SEO, and conversion optimization. That's how I got into it.
Oh, that's great because I think that the idea of how a consumer acts on emotion and
Yeah,
how it's not something that is based on a logical choice is something that I picked up from your website and your talk that was very interesting. And I see it a lot actually when I'm marketing, when I help my clients as well. And I love how you were able to put that together in your TED talk about the limbic system and the
mm-hmm.
emotional connection that you have with products. And SEO back then was very much a game of how can you put as many keywords inside of your website,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's the actual how do you get people to buy. So that transition into marketing, now it's a really cool story. And so how does actually the role of creativity play in marketing? Because you found a creative way to actually go from neuroscience and then into SEO and then
Right.
into neuromarketing or marketing and then coining the phrase neuromarketing.
I
Now
didn't
that,
coin the frame though.
okay, gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, somebody else coined it. Yeah.
But coming together with that whole transition and really that's a very creative flow and a very creative story and transition. And so how does creativity play a role in marketing in your mind?
Um, this is kind of it's a big question. We have to kind of look at the history of marketing and advertising. Back in probably before, Google came along, dominated the internet search. Marketing and advertising was mainly about creativity. All these ad agencies, all these marketing firms, they hire a lot of creative people. It's all about how to design the TV commercials, smart TV commercials, Super Bowl ads, Super Bowl commercials, were creative ads, magazine ads, packaging, design the products, design the packaging. A lot of creativity goes into uh, marketing and advertising. But then internet came along, Google came along. That kind of disrupt the whole flow. Then but that's the problem with with having marketing and advertising rely on creativity. There is some problem with it because there's no matrix. There are no like a solid scientific matrix you can use to gauge whether this is going to be effective or not. There's no predicted. There's nothing to predict it.
Hmm.
And you can design something very clever, and then you get a bunch of people, the ad agency people, and then you say you corporate executives sit together and say, oh, I like this Super Bowl ad, let's put it out there, let's spend $5 million on a 30-second commercial. Well, it may work, it may not work. If it doesn't work, there goes your $5 million. But there's nothing really solid can actually use to measure the impact of your creativity or creative design. Then internet came along. what you can do on the internet, you can actually measure the effectiveness of your marketing. You create an ad, you can see how many people click on it, and you can create a design to see how people pay, how much attention people pay to different elements of design. You can start using scientific measure. You can use data to gauge, to measure the effectiveness of your effort. That introduced data science. You introduce science into marketing.
Hmm.
Then that kind of make some creative people really kind of feel a little confused, a little puzzled, because one thing about is they feel like they do something very creative, but then they look at the data. That's not true. I give you one example, one story. This is actually really interesting. When there's this guy, his name's Douglas Bowman. He was very well-known designer. Then he was hired by Google. He had about a 3-year tenure at Google, and then he left. So the rumor was, this is what I read about. He was very creative. He was very good at design. Then he put together a design team for Google. But Google actually is run by engineers. So the roadblock he ran into was they come up with some very creative design, very creative ideas. But Google say, hold on, let's test it. Let's see if people like it. If people don't like it, we're not going to use this. So I think this kind of, just kind of from what I read, I think he felt like he was not able to utilize his talent. Then he felt like this is not my place. This is a place for engineers, not for creative people. But without realizing, creativity is great, but if you don't have the science to back it up, there's no predictability as to whether what you created can work for the consumers or not. So this is kind of where creativity kind of and science kind of meet and also collide. Science actually kind of this is kind of where science kind of got introduced to marketing after the internet marketing started. But now with neuroscience introduced to marketing, is people using neuroscience knowledge to say, hey, you create this Super Bowl ads, we're going to have a group of people gather some physiological data to measure how well they respond to the ads, what kind of emotion this ad triggers, whether they pay attention to it, whether this actually can, make them remember the brand, remember the messages. That's kind of introduced more science into marketing. And this kind of now we're into a new period of time where neuroscience and data science kind of are added into marketing. So this kind of we're facing some really new
Hmm.
challenges, but also new opportunities as well.
No, it's so fascinating what you just said, because as a creative, as a filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
traditionally, a trained filmmaker that went to film school, watched so many classic films out there, and when I graduated and got into the film and entertainment industry, as an artist, we believe you if you build it, they will come. If I create the most fantastic, beautiful, creative, never before seen piece, then the masses will come. Though, as I found as I went through the industry and worked in the industry, the numbers tell whether or not what you did was actually successful. There's so many stories of flops from well-known directors and also successes from really bad directors. And then, of course, the whole idea of Rotten Tomatoes and how critics can make a movie look sound extremely amazing and something that someone has to watch, but then of course the crowd score would be down and vice versa. And I think that as a creative, there is a middle ground, because just like Steve Jobs says, it's all about, a creative ships, like an artist ships. And also at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I think that creatives also have to think about how can your art can can impact the masses and impact people, rather than just yourself. Now, there's two schools of thoughts for artists. There's an artist who say, I make it for myself. I do it for the art and purely for myself. And I understand that. That's where I used to be. And there's, of course, the other school of artists that are, I make art so that people consume it. I make art because I want people to enjoy it. And that's where marketing comes into play. And also, this is where social media has actually created a hybrid creator. And this hybrid creator is actually the influencer, quote unquote, the influencer. And so you have these filmmakers now who look at social media, and they look at these videographers who didn't go to film school. They just picked up a camera and just learned the techniques. Millions of views, millions of subscribers. Though the filmmakers went to got a master's, done features and shorts, maybe 1,000 followers and no engagement. Yet their art form is pure and so beautiful. And so
Mhm.
I love the fact that creativity and marketing really plays a really big role, and science and data is coming into play, because likes, engagement, insights, Facebook, Instagram, even Pinterest and Twitter, everyone has the data now. And so as creatives, because I'm a YouTuber, creatives now can use this data to calculate whether or not my video was successful when it comes to my own success metrics, my KPIs. So if my KPIs were views and I didn't get the views, then something was wrong. Yet if I was doing it just so that I could impress my family and friends and myself and my filmmaking friends, if I get a thumbs up and a hey, great video, my friend, from someone that I respect and not a million views, then I feel okay. And
Right.
I feel okay. And so it's awesome that there is this intersection now with data and marketing and creativity. And so with that being said, can you be too creative when you are marketing? Like is
I
being
think
mm-hmm,
absolutely you can. Just think about how many, Super Bowl commercials we don't have any memory of it. We don't even remember. We don't even sometimes we got the message crossed. Um, I I want to share with you this interesting story. I had this friend. This like happened many years ago when you're in are you in San Francisco?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, right? So you're familiar with 49ers, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
Steve Young and Jerry Rice. When back then when they were playing, there was this TV commercial. Jerry Rice and Steve Young and this young beautiful woman, three of them were out, at a restaurant, sitting together at a table. Then I think the room temperature maybe was a little low, feeling a little cold. So Steve Young stands up. He took out his jacket. You would think he was going to put this jacket on, put on the shoulder of his date, the young woman. But actually, he walked up to the back of the to Jerry Rice and put the jacket on his shoulders. So my friend told me this story. She said, "Oh, did you see that commercial? That was really cute." But then she said, "I don't remember what this commercial is all about." I later I watched that. It was either Master or Visa card. I don't remember which one it was, but it was Master or Visa card commercial. It was super. That's this kind of a it's they can get really creative, but the message got lost. People don't
Yeah.
know, like what are you selling here? I'm just hearing seeing the story. We watch the Super Bowl commercial very often. You boom, they dominate 30-second with 25-second of a maybe some storyline or some cute footages, but at the end, boom, the flash of something they sell. But who remember that? The one thing about this is kind of about science and creativity. There's this one when they intersect. Just kind of want to share this with you and your audience. Creativity, artists they thrive on breaking the patterns. They want to create something that people never seen before, they're not familiar with, and something so unique, something so new. When Picasso came out, he created this cubism. Cubism was not firstly, widely accepted because all of a sudden you see the distorted faces
Mm-hmm.
and distorted figures. But it took a while for people to get used to it. But Picasso did not completely, create something that was so foreign to people. You still can see see the faces. You can see the body figures. But in our brains, we look for something familiar, and the familiarity actually, leads to create comfort. The status quo is good. We don't, that's keep us feel that way. We feel safe when we see something familiar. But at the same time, we also look for some novelty. We look for something new, something kind of original. But there's a tricky balance. There's a gray zone. If you're getting too creative, too new, this is why the abstract art never kind of really became mainstream, because our abstract art, a lot of people just cannot really understand what the art is trying to convey, the idea. We don't see, I don't see what the artists see. So that's kind of a thing, become a little too creative and too abstract. But on the other hand, if you create something really familiar and everybody has it already, so it's nothing new. So there's a gray zone. You gotta kind of move into it. You gotta have it done right. I think Picasso with his cubism, he kind of get it right. It was not too new, but it was very new. But it was not too old, and but it has this, the elements of it, what we're familiar with, the faces, the body figures. So he didn't really create something so abstract nobody could understand it. That's why I think people gradually kind of adapted, accepted.
Wow,
So this,
you go
this is
ahead.
kind of
Sorry.
where, yeah. So I think this is where artists kind of need to be mindful about this gray area. You want to be creative, but you don't, you want to understand people look for something they're familiar with. If you go outside that zone too far, and then that's kind of like well, you may like it yourself, but nobody else can connect with you. This guy who there was an in the art museum just like maybe a few months ago, in Miami or somewhere. This artist, he taped a banana with a duct tape on the wall. It's
Yeah.
like I don't get it, and I think a lot of people don't get it, but he gets it. And then somebody, really some bystander, he grabbed the banana, he ate it. So like what this is some kind of like, he kind of, I think what he did, maybe he kind of went outside the zone, the gray area.
Mm.
People really cannot. It's not relatable to them. That
Mhm.
really does not really kind of sink in.
Wow, you touched on a lot of great points there. Just because, as I'm an artist, and at the same time, I'm a marketer, I'm an entrepreneur as well,
Hmm.
and the two sides of me fight all the time, and it's the left brain and the right brain. It's the, hey, I want to make something that's pure art from the soul with no expectations from the outside world, because that's what true expression is. The other side is like, hey, I don't want you to waste time. Why are we making this? Is there a purpose behind this? And to find a way for to find that gray area is where a lot of artists want to be, because it's like one of my favorite filmmakers is David Lynch. Okay, and he,
Hmm.
of course, he came out with, I love Mulholland Drive, and there's some really great films he came out with, though a lot of people can't digest that filmmaking. They don't know what's going on. And I think that there are a lot of great creators out there who are innovating, but at the same time they're not finding that audience, because they're not doing what you said, doing something that's digestible and familiar, and but doing that slight variation that will get someone to notice it as something different from the norm. That's actually how what marketing is now, actually, because as I work with brands and create videos, it's always, okay, let's study what has been successful in your vertical, in your industry, with your competitors. Let's study those videos. Okay, that's successful, that got views and engagement. Let's figure out what your goals are, who your target audience is, what your voice is. Okay, how can we follow that follow that model that they have, but then infuse our voice and then have a slight variation so that it's different. And that's actually a lot of what influencers and, well, online creators and artists are doing right now, is trying to figure out how to beat the algorithm
Yep.
and how to also have that eye-catching, scroll-stopping image. And so it's the melding of science and data and creativity and art and marketing is all coming together right now. It's all coming together because there's an oversaturation of art. There's an oversaturation of creativity in the market and content. And so to a lot of artists now, creatives have to use the data and have to use creativity together in order to cut through the clutter. And with all of this, I want to know from your point of view, what is one of your favorite ad campaigns that showed a good balance, you know,
Hmm.
between that?
You touch on a lot of great points. I want to, before I tell you the one project I did, I really feel like it was kind of original in a different way. I always, I have been in the online marketing, field for the last 17 or 18 years. one thing I always tell my prospective clients or my clients is that a cool website kill a business,
Mm-hmm.
because this is kind of based on data. When you have a really creative, design, clever design, oh, you get the menu, you don't want people to come to the website. It's like you want, as artists ourselves, we want to shock the people, say, wow, that's really original. But the thing is, when people they have a need, their roofing is leaking or their plumbing is leaking, they come to your website, they have like a 10-second, you grab their attention to tell them, hey, you came to the right place, so don't go away. Don't look for another website. All you need to do to catch their attention, if you force them to learn the navigation, learn how to kind of explore your website, guess what? They're just gonna leave. They don't have the patience to do that. This is kind of the things that like I always tell people, a cool website kills a business.
Mm-hmm.
These days there are probably millions of websites they're about real estate agents, real estate agencies, big real estate firms like Zillow. They all have websites. On their websites, one thing very common is they use all these beautiful stock photos. They use these super happy people, super happy models living in the home, fancy home. Nobody could ever afford those kind of homes. And this is kind of a very common trend. I have a good friend. I built a website. He's in real estate. He has a big team. His company's name is Minnesota Real Estate Team. I did a website. I did 3 websites for him about 10 years ago. But just by the end of last year, he said, Terry, let's upgrade all these websites and put into one together. How do you want to approach it? This is why I came out the way and say, hey, you have 100 about he has about 170 agents. I said, Ryan, let's get your agents send you the photos of their clients at closing. These are real photos of the real houses, nothing fake. And guess what? And then so we built a website. Is the website address mnrealestateteam.com. MN is in Minnesota. You can look it up. All the photos we use, they're all real photos, taken from the cell phones, taken from the cheap cameras, but all really real. Nothing, no models, no spectacular homes. All these kind of homes, yeah, just people, regular people, they want to buy, not like a $2 million mansion. This kind of way we create this have to reach a balance, because people look for the connections. When you show them something real, they feel like, wow, this place is for me. If you show something fake, they can easily identify something fake. They say, this is not for me. I'm going somewhere else. So you kind of very subtly create this emotional connection with the potential visitors, telling them very subtly, this is the right place. Don't go away. For this website. So we built a website for about 100, with about almost 200 pages, with a lot of photos, and then the photos of all his agents. We did not use a single stock photo, all real photos. That's what kind of like I thought that was very, I think if you look at real estate websites, I don't think you can find those kind of websites very frequent, very common. They're all
Mm.
using stock photos, trying to create this kind of really cool design, really beautiful, but beautiful, they're not real. You want to create
Yeah,
something real.
it's true. I think this is the moment in time where a lot of the consumers want transparency. They want relatability. They want someone to believe in, a company to believe in, because I think that a lot of people feel lied to over the years. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
because of marketing. It's because of that polished marketing. And I've seen it with a lot of the user generated content being much more popular now. TikTok. TikTok is all user generated.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't using a camera like a red camera or a cinema camera. It's using a phone camera. And these kids and these influencers are more getting more views than most people who are using high quality cameras. And it's the same thing with a lot of testimonials and Amazon reviews and Yelp reviews. People want to hear organic, relatable, real stories, and they want to see that too. So it's great that you said that, because I see it in marketing as well these days, and there's a huge shift towards that. And
Mm-hmm.
but do you feel that with all this data going around
Mm-hmm.
and with creatives out there trying to, of course, create and express themselves,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that using data can help, creatives? Like, how can data help creatives with their creative choices?
I think data, we can talk about some of the science. Data. There's a lot of scientific data, talking about reveals what how humans behave. What actually works with the brain, what doesn't work with the brain. So I think for creatives, sometimes it helps to kind of understand the science behind human decisions, human cognitions, what human attention. Those kind of knowledge, really, the knowledge from those areas can really help creative people to design something more digestible, more usable. I give you an example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These days you go to websites. Websites that are created by a lot of these, graphic artists, designers. Very common theme is this. You read it. They want to give you information. They say, content is king. They give you a lot of content, but when they put the content together, they go wild with color combinations. It can be white text on black background, white text on blue background, white text on green background or red background. Here's the thing, you can use that kind of a technique to catch people's attention. You think that looks cool, that catches people's attention. But there's a side effect of that, because when we read white on black, red on green, white on red, guess what? Actually, those background colors actually impair our cognition.
Hmm.
Here's a study I like to share with you. This kind of really start out with a story, and then it kind of merged into this story actually kind of inspired us a series of research studies. The story goes like this. I don't really know how many years ago this was, but at a university, this professor, he always came up with 4 sets of questions for exams. Then he printed 4 sets of questions on 4 colors of paper. Those colors are blue, red, green, and pink. No, red, no, pink, yellow, blue, and green. 4 colors. Because he wanted to prevent cheating. If I have the green sheet, somebody sitting next to me has the yellow sheet, I would not look over his shoulder to try to copy the answers. That was his purpose. He always kept 4 sets of questions on 4 colors of paper. Then one day he did not have enough time to come up with 4 sets of questions. Well, he went ahead to print the same set of questions on 4 colors of paper. While he was grading them, he noticed something he didn't expect. The top 10% all yellow, the bottom 10% all blue and pink. This observation triggered a 10-year study on how color influences our cognition.
Wow.
And then here's the finding. As background color, white and yellow enhance our cognition. Other colors like green, blue, red, they dumb us down.
Hmm.
So how to make this rumor relatable? Just think about legal pads. What are the most two popular colors for legal pads? White and yellow.
That's right.
This is exactly why we're attracted to white and yellow legal pads. You can certainly buy the pink, blue, or green legal pads, but they just don't sell. We're attracted to white and yellow because they enhance our cognition. You think about the popular media we read, like newspapers, magazines, books. They're all black on white, black on light gray, black on light yellow. And if you look at the most popular websites, Google, Amazon, New York Times, it's all black and white.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, this kind of where creativity and science can actually really help each other. The science can guide the creative souls to do something that really match up how the brain works. Well, if you know the science, you would not really just say, hey, let's get this whole web page all blue or green or red and then put white text on it. And even worse, let's put it like a green or red or blue text on some weird color combination. Because when you do that, people, you want people to read it. But when people read it, they don't, guess what? They don't understand it. They don't remember it. Those are the
Wow.
things kind of can be the limitation you're going to run into if you don't know the science behind the brain, how the brain works.
Wow, that reminds me of Ogilvy on advertising. When he said that, it's just all the studies show. It's just black on white. Is just how humans like to actually read things. And also with color correction and color grading in the filmmaking world, the reason why people like black and white movies is because it's easier for people to digest black and white movies. And so when it went from black and white to color, there was this very strange transition. And
Hmm.
the use of black and white can be used a lot of times to really grab someone's attention. And so, do you think that science and data would actually hurt creativity, or do you think it would enhance it?
I think it can work both ways. Really, if you feel like you say there are like two schools of creative people, and one school of them they I just create these things to follow my own my own passion, my
Mhm.
own drive. I create this for myself, not for somebody else to consume it. If you want to do that, go wild. We have the brain, the brain. A lot of creative people they can come with something really amazing, and but you can create something brand new. Nobody even understand what it is, but if someone start paying attention to it, they educate themselves, and they start understanding it, and then they may catch on people's attention. A lot of the inventions, new inventions we have, they came out of nowhere. So like
Mhm.
cars,
Mhm.
before the cars, it was like horses, but people, that was a very creative thing to have the cars, and then but people gradually adapt to it because it was very useful, very practical, and so I think if you really have the creative passion, you don't want to limit it because
Mm.
science is very limited. Right now,
Mm.
we call it science because we don't, we know what we know, and then scientists know, what we don't really know is a lot bigger than what we know.
Hmm.
So I don't think you want to kind of view science as a shackle, where it can be a shackle at a certain point. But on the other hand, if you want to create something that's going to be consumed by the masses, you want to be mindful how how people's brain actually responds to different messages. If you really go outside the gray zone, kind of too novel, too unfamiliar, they become resistant to it, and then whatever you create will not catch their attention. They will not remember what you create.
That's great advice because it really just depends on what your goal is with your art. What is the
Exactly.
goal?
Yeah.
So you can't just say you have to have a million views. You can just create just to create. And then if that's the case, don't worry about the data and the science. Just worry about your creativity. And then vice versa. When if you want to get those views, then think about the science because it will help you with your decision making.
Right.
Um, Now, with your research and your experience, when we're talking about creativity, have you ever found the best ways to get into a creative flow state?
For me, it's I think I always find that flow zone I become when I become really good at something.
Mm,
I feel like when I'm doing something effortlessly, I always kind of admire these elite runners. I look at
hmm
those
hmm
Kenyan runners or some really those just top level runners. I feel like when they're running, it's effortless. They're not really breathing hard. They're not really
mm,
doing anything. But when I'm running, I'm just like huffing and puffing and really just like putting all my effort out there. But I think the thing is when you're really good at something, and I think easier to get into that flow zone. And the other thing I think what really I kind of experience the flow zone myself. I mean, being in the flow zone myself is where that state is when I'm not very stressed.
mm.
I feel like I can do this really well, and then I cannot believe somebody's paying me to do this. I think that's kind of a sweet spot. I feel like even if I don't get paid to do what I do, I wouldn't mind doing it. I think that's kind of where the flow state is, and you're really good at
Love
it,
it.
and then you really enjoy doing what you do. And then if you really have to force yourself doing it, you're beating a deadline, you're trying to just crank out all that as much work you can. You just kind of that's kind of pressure, the stress level is high,
Mm,
that really inhibit your thinking. This is kind of a it's kind of about the neuroscience of the stress, how we handle stress. When we under a lot of stress, guess what? The limbic system fires up. We're under stress. We that really affects how our brain works. And the most critical part of the thinking brain is this frontal cortex. It's right behind your forehead, this part of the brain. This part of the brain, when we're under stress, the activity level of this part of the brain decreases.
Mm.
And that means you're not really thinking very creatively. You're overwhelmed by your emotions. You're overwhelmed by the things that really inhibit your creativity. So I think it's kind of one thing is when I'm not stressed out by certain things, when I'm really good at certain things, and I can be in that flow state.
Love it. And I think that's why I think a lot of creatives want to create an environment around them that decreases stress or finding themselves in situations where they aren't stressed out. And then, yes, always working on your craft and developing your craft to a point where you are better than you were yesterday. And also, it becomes a habit. Like you said, like the Kenyan runners out there, for me, it's also watching martial artists and
Hmm.
watching athletes where it's so effortless and you love it so much that it's actually a stress relief in its own. And so it's this great
Hmm.
cycle that relieves your stress at the same time gets you in a deeper flow state.
Right.
And then for you, I mean, with creativity, and with you're of course creating your websites, you're doing a lot of marketing out there. How do you personally get out of creative ruts when you need to come up with something and an idea?
Um, Most often, I find running is my kind of a sanctuary. Running very often, if I can't really solve the problem, sometimes I kind of hit a wall. I just like to, I'm just going to put aside, go out for a run, decrease my stress level, and then that kind of free up my creative part of the brain. And very often, I'm not kidding you, Mitchell. It's very often the best answer all came during my run.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I felt like, wow, I could not believe I just got that idea. And then I came home and get back to my office and you know jot down the idea and then get it done. That's very often just happened so many times. That's kind of a thing, getting out of the rut. And the other thing is kind of I want to be mindful of the stress level. When you're stressed
Mm.
out, just like I said, your brain normally kind of just handling the basic survival need. Your brain doesn't really care about whether you're going to plan for the future. If the lion chasing you, hey, there's no tomorrow. There's no planning for the vacation, or go out watching a movie 2 weeks from now. You just have to run. And then that when that happens, a lot of parts of the brain got shut down,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Mm-hmm.
cannot really think straight. You cannot think very clearly. That's kind of things I kind of be mindful about.
You're not alone. Actually, a lot of creatives that I've interviewed on this podcast say the same thing.
Oh, really?
It's exercise, it's physical activity. Either
Hmm.
it's climbing, bouldering, a run.
Hmm.
Alec Ross, who was on this, he said a run. My friend, who's a street artist, said bouldering, climbing. And other people also do it through walking, going outside for a walk in nature. And so I definitely agree. I'm the type of person that likes to get up and exercise just so I can actually get prepared for the day. And so,
Yeah.
Terry, it's such a great podcast interview with you, and I know you're a busy person. So I really want to just end this with a really great last question.
Okay.
And it's really, what is some advice you'd like to give to creative people who are trying to market their skills and services online?
Great question. It's a big question. There's not a simple answer to that. Um, I think for creative people, I think very often I would say this actually I came across a lot of creative people. When I was doing my work, I think you gotta understand what you do will help. What can you do to help your clients solve their problems, and what is their main problem? And very often you have to put your ego aside, say, I'm a rare creative person, I can, but the thing is, I think what really I have seen a lot of was very often the creative people take on a project, they use that project as a venue, as a channel to get their creativity out, to
Mm,
show off their creativity. But that's not what you do. That's actually, you do the job for your clients to help them solve their problem. And then you can use your creativity in a very smart way to get that job done. But the main thing is understand what you can do to help your clients solve their problem. And what first you have got to identify what their problems are, and then how you can help out. But so put your creativity, in the back burner a little bit, And so don't only just like, hey, I'm the most creative person, I can come in, but your creativity has to work with marketing. It has to be part of the whole, marketing campaign. It cannot be just say, hey, the marketing campaign kind of revolves around your creativity. That's kind of, you shoot yourself in the foot. That's not going to work, because at the end of the day, the business care about their bottom line. You put together a campaign where video or a logo design or marketing message or whatever you put out their website. What they care about is, is this worth the money I put in? And if yes, you're gonna have the job. If not, then they're gonna look for somebody else. I think that's something I would say. I run into some creative people. I think that's maybe something. I don't know whether that rings a bell in with you or not.
Yeah. Oh, it does. Oh, trust me. I think that I've had to put my artist self aside with some clients and have to really bite the bullet and just take the notes. If the client wants to have their logos everywhere and they're the one that's footing the bill, I'm putting logos everywhere and I'm not going to fight back,
It's true,
because to me, it's hey, to get paid to be creative, that's a blessing. That is a
right?
blessing. And as artists and creatives who are doing this as our livelihood, we're blessed to have this as a career, and to
Hmm.
have that as our livelihood. A lot of people dream of. So
Right.
definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
So Terry, thank you so much for this wonderful interview. Before we go, where can we find you and how can we support you?
Um, Thank you. It's my pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me to be here. It's really good to share some thoughts with you guys. Where to find me? My company's name is Neural Marketing Services, and you can find me at neuromarketingservices.com. I did a TED Talk on neuromarketing. It's 17 minutes. I did it just almost exactly 1 year ago. And you can look up on YouTube, Neuromarketing TED Talk. You'll find it. So far, close to 50,000 people have watched it within
Hmm.
less than a year. It's kind of a growing, and if you can help me spread the word out and get more people to watch it. Mainly, I think the thing is neuromarketing is part of our life. In my talk, I made the point, as long as you shop on Amazon, you gotta watch it. As long as you use Google, you gotta watch this video, because you want to understand what's done behind the scene to make you do, what you do. Sometimes it's kind of about marketing, but more is about our unconscious decisions, what can influence our decisions. And very often we don't pay attention to the influences we have. Your marketing is widely used, in political campaigns as well.
Hmm.
Very often people can, well, if this falls in the wrong hand, people can become manipulative, and they do the things you don't pay attention to it, but at the same time, they influence your decisions, influence your choices. I would encourage people to just watch it and develop at least awareness of all the how we make decisions unconsciously without our own awareness.
No, I agree. The reason why we're on this podcast is because I watched that video, and everyone who's listening right now, please Google or YouTube search neuromarketing Terry Wu, because it really does give you a great education about buyer decisions and consumer decisions, and will give you the leg up when you are putting out your art and are trying to get engagement and views and just any type of KPI you're trying to reach. So thank you again, Terry. This was a pleasure. I had a great time just talking to you, and I will see you online, my friend. Thank you, and
Okay,
go out and for a run. You deserve a
will
beautiful
do.
run right now.
I did my run today before
uh,
the yeah. Yeah.
all right,
So
bye,
you take care,
Terry.
my friend. Yeah,
You
it's
too.
my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, Mitchell. Yeah. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Haven podcast. And if you dig it and like what you heard today, please give us a nice review and rating and share it with one of your friends that you think needs some creative inspiration. You can always find more content and resources at thecreativehaven.com, and hit me up on Instagram at Mitchell Doomlau. And if you want to reach out, collab, or ask any questions, you have my permission to slide into my DMs. So keep positive, continue to learn and hone your craft, and create all day. Salamat.